It's a celebration of America's freedom. Welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. The Marc Scaringi Show is your place for a weekly discussion on making America great again. The important political and legal issues of the day, a celebration of the Constitution, and traditional American values. Marc is a practicing attorney, a former senatorial candidate, a Donald J. Trump-endorsed delegate, and a defender of the Constitution. His goal? To put America first. And now, celebrating America's freedoms, here's attorney Marc Scaringi.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Marc Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. And this is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. And thanks for tuning in on WHP 580 AM and iHeartRadio and News Talk 104.1 WEJS, broadcasting out of Williamsport. If you'd like to watch prior podcasts of the show or take a look at some great merchandise, including our popular Right to Bear Arms muscle shirt and the We're Glad You're Our Neighbor, Just Please Don't Kill Us yard signs and T-shirts, go to the MarcScaringiShow.com website. And for more political and legal news throughout the course of the week, don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Well, we endured several days of the Democratic National Convention. This was one of the most, in my view, un-American and unpatriotic and just simply weird national political conventions I've ever witnessed. It was like a menagerie of the mean, the strange, and the absurd. Parts of it reminded me of one of those 19th century traveling freak shows. Did you see Billy Porter's performance? Now, Billy Porter, he's the man who famously wears women's dresses in conjunction with men's suits. So he'll wear a tuxedo top with a full, ballroom gown dress bottom. He's a Broadway actor and, of course, an LGBTQ advocate who said he finds wearing women's dresses and high heels to be liberating. And my wife said he must not have been wearing high heels very long. They're less liberating than they are painful. But in any event, this Billy Porter was the closing act for the first day of the Democratic National Convention and got things off to a very weird and strange start. So this Billy Porter, a man who's famous because he wears dresses to help liberate himself from his toxic masculinity, of course, the Democrats at their convention put him up front and center to close day one of their convention. He looked lovely in his part male, part female dress. He sang Buffalo Springfield's For What It's Worth. That's that 1960s era protest song that features the famous line, "Hey children, what's that song? Everybody look what's going down." You know, and by the way, while Buffalo Springfield's song was written as an anti-Vietnam protest anthem, Billy Porter performed it for the Democratic National Convention against a backdrop of images for our current cultural and political wars, not hot wars, thankfully, this time. But there were photos and graphics of course, Black Lives Matter protests splashed across the screen, along with images of people in masks in a country, America, under siege from the pandemic, of course, and our liberal friends have been protesting. But this was the closing act for day one of the National Democratic Convention. All of this stuff about Black Lives Matter and all of these protests, I don't think does much good for the Democrats electorally as they try to, in the next couple of months, convince the American people that they're the right party to lead our country ahead in the next 4 to 8 years. And we also heard from Michelle Obama on the first night of the convention. She was the featured speaker. And so let's dive right into Michelle Obama's speech. I think it was a horrible speech, and I think it was just a one litany or one false excuse false accusation about Donald Trump, false accusation about what Trump has allegedly done to America or the harm he has allegedly done to America after another. And it was down, it was depressing. It was Michelle Obama at her usual self-righteousness that she exudes, that she is morally superior to the rest of America. Sometimes she's proud of America, and that is when America elects her husband president, but often she is disappointed in we, the American people. Now, this is a woman, Michelle Obama, who repeatedly through that speech said that she despises politics. But we have to remember that, and that she talks about systemic racism, and so much of her speech was about how whole demographic groups, namely her supporters and those supporters of her husband's, have been shut out and left behind, and their wants and needs and their dreams are not being heard by Donald Trump in this White House. But let's remember how, and by our society at large, with the accusation of the systemic racism that America is coming out of Michelle Obama and so many leaders in the Democratic National Party. But remember how well Michelle Obama has done. This woman, who really has no personal accomplishments of her own, she never built a business. She has no career accomplishments to speak of. She had a series of jobs that she got working at the University of Chicago Medical Center while her husband was a United States Senator, and thus in a position to steer large amounts of taxpayer dollars to the health center that hired her to do something like cultural diversity, some sort of cultural or community outreach position she held there. They paid her over $300,000 a year to do community outreach for a hospital system. Well, think about that. Is that systemic racism that gave Michelle Obama that $300,000 some job? I don't think it was systemic racism. It was probably more like affirmative action, diversity hiring, goals and quotas within so many of our institutions, and perhaps coincidentally the fact that her husband was a United States Senator and thus could do a lot of good for the institution that she served. But nevertheless, America is a horribly racist country that has denied and suppressed the rights and the aspirations of so many black Americans, according to Michelle Obama, notwithstanding the fact she now has 4 mansions. She has that mansion up in Martha's Vineyard. She has a mansion in Chicago, of course, a mansion in Washington, D.C., and now they're purchasing a mansion in Hawaii, the mansion that was used in the television show from the 80s featuring Magnum P.I. So in this disgustingly and horribly systemically racist America, Michelle and Barack Obama have done quite well. 4 mansions is doing quite well. But in any event, back to Michelle Obama's speech. She, she appeared before the Billy Porter performance that showed the war protest song, the Black Lives Matter slogans, and the power of the people and all of that stuff. Michelle Obama said, and here at home is George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black Lives Matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office. And that's I think, a remarkably false statement. Donald Trump has said Black Lives Matter. Of course they do. For Michelle Obama to accuse the president of stating that Black lives don't matter, or that he's derisive of Black lives, is disgusting. It's a disgustingly false statement for the former First Lady of the United States of America to make. We're going to talk more about Michelle Obama's convention speech, the Democratic National Convention, when we return from this brief commercial break. You're listening to The Marc Scaringi Show.
Now, more of Marc Scaringi on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to The Marc Scaringi Show. This is your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. This is where we talk about the important political and legal issues of the day from the perspective of putting America first. We're talking about political issues. That's the Democratic National Convention. That was a virtual Zoom meeting, and it was a menagerie of the weird. We talked about how they closed the evening with the live performance of Billy Porter. This is the LGBTQ advocate who wears, I guess, him and her outfits, a suit coat with a dress. He's showing that he's both a man and a woman, and this is what the Democratic National Party wants America, I guess, to think and view about the Democratic agenda for this fall. It also featured Michelle Obama, who gave what I'm characterizing as a disgusting, hate-filled false speech with one false statement after another. And we're talking about her one statement here at home. And you're welcome to call in 717-540-0580 and let me know what you think about the Democratic National Convention. Michelle Obama said, and here at home as George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered, stating the simple fact that a Black Lives Matters is still met with derision from the nation's highest office. No, Donald Trump does not deride those who state the simple fact that Black lives matter. False statement, firstly. Secondly, you've got George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and a never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered. It's as if white police officers are lining up blacks and just shooting and killing them indiscriminately. It's like something out of Nazi Germany in World War II. Entirely false. We're talking about in the low single digits the number of killings of Black Americans by law enforcement officers in this country on an annual basis. That's a very small number. And let's talk about George Floyd being innocent. Let's save that one for a second. First, let's talk about Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor was not the Breonna Taylor story is very tragic and sad for the deceased Breonna Taylor and her family, no question, but it has nothing to do with racism. It was a no-knock entry into Taylor's apartment by Louisville law enforcement officials who were on the narcotics investigatory team. That was the cause of the problem. It's the no-knock search warrants that have always been dangerous and have always played a role in this war on drugs. And the way to help ensure situations like the killing of Breonna Taylor don't occur again is to reform our laws to eliminate the no-knock entry, which itself is rather suspect under the Fourth Amendment. It's not to riot, burn, and destroy our cities because of the shooting death of Breonna Taylor. And so why doesn't Michelle Obama speak out against no-knock searches? Why doesn't Michelle Obama advocate for enhanced protections against unreasonable searches and seizures under the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution? To me, that would be something that would be effective and helpful. That would be something that could be done in honor of Breonna Taylor, not burning down a city. So this is just an example of Michelle Obama falsely stating that Breonna Taylor was killed because she was Black. That's not true at all. It had nothing to do with racism. And then Michelle Obama just launching these rhetorical attacks against the Trump administration and doing nothing herself to try to solve the problem, which is the no-knock search warrant and the war on drugs that has many more innocent victims than Breonna Taylor. Another statement, another quote from Michelle Obama's speech, because whenever we look to this White House, oh, you know what? Let's go back to George Floyd for a second. And here at home, this is Michelle Obama, as George Floyd, the never-ending list of innocent people of color continue to be murdered. Now, this George Floyd situation is very problematic for Michelle Obama and for Black Lives Matter and for others who are using George Floyd as a martyr. And he's simply the wrong character for that position. And listeners of this show, you'll recall that we conducted an in-depth analysis of the facts of the George Floyd case, and we looked at the videos that had been produced and released. We looked at the charging documents and concluded it's very possible that Officer Chauvin, that's the officer at the end there with his knee on George Floyd's neck, very possible that Officer Chauvin was conducting a lawful and legal technique designed to render a suspect who is actively resisting arrest unconscious, to stop the suspect from resisting arrest. So that was a lawful technique that Officer Chauvin was employing against George Floyd. And George Floyd not only appeared to be under the influence and unable to control himself, he was under the influence. He had started resisting arrest from the beginning of the stop. And from the beginning, before he even came into contact with Officer Chauvin, George Floyd had been complaining that he couldn't breathe, and he cited the grounds of claustrophobia as the reason for not wanting to follow the lawful police command and get into the automobile. And again, George Floyd started saying, "I can't breathe," well before he was placed on the ground and under the physical control of the police officers. And the recently released body camera from one of the police officers shows that well before Floyd was pinned to the ground, he told the officers at least 6 times, "I can't breathe." And a new autopsy was just released, which confirms what we had suspected and talked about here on the Marc Scarinci show at the beginning of this incident, that George Floyd likely died of a drug-induced heart attack. Floyd had overdosed on the powerful opioid fentanyl. You know, and that is what the most recent autopsy report shows. That was released just a day or two ago. You won't see that in the news. They won't cover it. They'll suppress it as much as they can. And also, the police body camera has Floyd saying he just recovered from COVID-19, and so he didn't want to get in the police vehicle, I guess, because he didn't want to go to jail where he thought he would get reinfected with COVID. And the video that was just release reveals the disappearance of a white spot on Floyd's tongue that looks like 2 milligrams of fentanyl, which is a lethal dose. Witnesses said Floyd was out of control, out of his mind. Floyd admitted to officers that he was hooping, which I guess means he was high on illegal drugs. So George Floyd was not killed because he was black. It's very likely that George Floyd died due to cardiac arrest induced by an overdose of fentanyl. Now, obviously, it didn't help that he was pinned to the ground with a knee to his neck. No question about that. But it does not. First of all, George Floyd was not an innocent man at all. He had just committed a crime. He has a whole history of criminal convictions. He resisted arrest from the beginning, was high on fentanyl, out of control, had false reasons not to get into the police car. Just because you had COVID or just because you're claustrophobic does not excuse you from obeying a lawful police command. And I could go on and on and on, but George Floyd is now has become a martyr of the Black Lives Movement, and thus a martyr for politicians like Michelle Obama who support that movement And Michelle Obama is trying to hang the murder of George Floyd around the neck of Donald Trump. And that's really what she's getting at when she makes that statement in her speech, that George Floyd is just another in a long list of people of color who've been murdered by law enforcement, and Donald Trump, the Trump administration, is derisive of the term Black Lives Matter. And that's why one of the many reasons why I have said that the Michelle Obama speech was just one of the most disgusting speeches that I've heard a politician given. And she claims that she hates politics. She's a politician. She's speaking at the 2020 Democratic National Convention. Her husband's not the nominee. He's already served his 2 terms. She's speaking there because she's a politician. She wants Donald Trump to lose, and she'll say whatever she thinks she needs to say in order to see that done. And so now, because of this false martyr in George Floyd that she mentions, Breonna Taylor, who was killed in a situation that had nothing to do with her race or racism, now all of a sudden our cities are being burned down. We have riots. We have desecration of the statues of our founding fathers. We have denunciations of the founding of America, that it was based upon systemic racism back in 1619, and we're seeing the results of that in the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor today. These are vicious falsehoods that will only tear America apart, will not bring America together. And this is what Michelle Obama is doing to our country. And I know that she looks nice and she speaks nicely, and everybody thinks that she's wonderful. She's kind of a sister, so to speak, to Oprah Winfrey. And so we're all supposed to feel good when Michelle Obama speaks. But no. She's telling lies about America, and she's blaming Trump for the deaths of 2 individuals, essentially blaming Trump for what's going on with regard to police shootings in our country. And it's fake and it's false. And Black Lives Matter is featured in heroic terms at the Democratic National Convention. And Michelle Obama will condemn you like she condemned Trump for not speaking up and advocating and lauding the Black Lives Matter organization. That's what she wants Trump to do. She wants Trump to laud the Black Lives Matter organization, which, by the way, is a Marxist-Leninist organization that uses violence in the streets to achieve its political goals. And if you just read their website, they are about countering state-sponsored actions that they decry as criminal actions against Black Americans. So their goal is to challenge and to oppose the state. That's pretty direct. Whenever you organize a group of individuals to counter state action, and the state action is lawful action, you're kind of getting into an area that's a little bit like insurrection. We're going to talk more about the Democratic National Convention, Michelle Obama's speech. When we return from this brief commercial break, you're listening to the Marc Scaringi.
Let's get back to the Marc Scaringi Show on News Radio WHP 580.
And welcome back to the Marc Scaringi Show. Your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. We're talking about the 2020 Democratic National Convention that just recently adjourned. It was a great big Zoom meeting for Democrats across the country, widely panned by lots of viewers. Very strange anecdotes and stories and videos throughout the course of the event. We had actresses serving as moderators, which further solidifies in the minds of so many of us here in middle America that Hollywood and the Democratic National Party go hand in hand. I don't know how that helps the Democrats in middle America, but I guess they're sticking with their base and their financial supporters and the supporters they most identify with. These people at the highest levels of the Democratic Party, they love celebrities. They worship celebrityhood. Michelle Obama is a celebrity. She is an Oprah Winfrey. She's really never accomplished anything on her own. She claims she despises politics, even though has made her incredibly wealthy, and she lives the lifestyle of the rich and famous. She famously zoomed in to the Democratic National Convention from her new estate on Martha's Vineyard, and she did it a while ago. It wasn't even live. I mean, she couldn't even be bothered to do it live, to call in from one of her 4 estates. And I want to move on to another part of Michelle Obama's speech, which I think is very telling. And I know we have some callers queued up there, so just hang on. Let me make this one other point, and then we'll open up the phone lines and we'll take your calls. But hang on the line, don't hang up. In another part of Michelle Obama's speech, she says, because whenever we look to this White House for some leadership or consolation or any semblance of steadiness, what we get instead is chaos, division, and a total and utter lack of empathy. And the interesting thing is her statement, the part of her statement about empathy. She continued, empathy, that's something I've been thinking a lot about lately, the ability to walk in someone else's shoes, the recognition that someone else's experience has value too. Most of us practice this without a second thought. If we see someone suffering or struggling, and we don't stand in judgment. We reach out because there, but for the grace of God, go I. It's not a hard concept to grasp. It's what we teach our children. So there is Michelle Obama castigating Donald Trump for not showing empathy, for a total and utter lack of empathy, as if empathy were the most important criteria or quality to have in a U.S. president. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been here on this planet for regrettably almost 50 years. I hate to admit that. Never once in my life have I looked to a United States president or any politician for empathy. That is the strangest thing. Who out there, and maybe you have, call in if you have you ever looked to a president for empathy? You know, and I was recently listening to, and don't ask me why, sometimes I torture myself, but I was recently listening to Hillary Rodham Clinton's commencement address at Wellesley College in 1969. And a young Hillary Rodham, she spoke very well, very articulately, in a very different voice, kind of a soft, much more feminine voice than she speaks with now. But she spoke out against politicians simply showing empathy. Hillary said, quote, part of the problem with just empathy, with professed goals, is that empathy doesn't do us anything. We've had lots of empathy. We've had lots of sympathy. But we feel that for too long our leaders have viewed politics as the art of the possible, and the challenge now is to practice politics as the art of making what appears to be impossible possible. That is Hillary Rodham, her address to her graduating class at Wellesley College in 1968, saying empathy doesn't do anything for us. Yet, Michelle Obama, just a few nights ago, raises empathy to the highest of heights of politics. And as I say, that's Michelle Obama being the Oprah Winfrey of American politics. But, of course, Hillary is right. Hopefully, no one's recording this, and we'll play it back in years to come, having me say that Hillary is right. But she is on this issue. We don't look to politicians for empathy. We look to politicians to solve the problems, to fix the problems in our country. So here's Michelle O expressing empathy for those who are suffering or struggling. Now, millions of Americans in America's heartland have been suffering or struggling due to the massive manufacturing job loss caused by NAFTA and other free trade deals supported by her husband, Barack Obama. Then comes Donald Trump. Candidate Trump campaigns that he would bring back our manufacturing jobs. Obama, affronted by his own failure, actually, Obama couldn't care less about the loss of manufacturing jobs because those were losses suffered by those he claimed cling to their guns and God. So Obama didn't even show empathy. Barack Obama didn't even show empathy to the millions of Americans, thousands of Pennsylvanians who cling to their guns and God because we've lost our manufacturing jobs. Obama, no empathy in practice. Michelle Obama says empathy is the height, and Trump doesn't have it. But Trump saw the suffering and the hurting of millions of middle Americans. So what does Trump think he should do? Show empathy? Cry with them? And the Obamas never did. The Obamas, in fact, derided them, made derisive comments about middle Americans. We cling to our guns and God. That's not empathy. That's derision. That's Michelle and Barack Obama. But let me just say this. Trump sees it and says, oh, I'm going to fix it. Right. Let's fix the problem. Let's restore the manufacturing jobs so we can revitalize these communities and bring jobs and paychecks and thus hope back to the lives of millions of Americans here in middle America. And remember Trump talking about that during the campaign in 2016. And what did then President Barack Obama say in response? Barack Obama said, well, how exactly are you going to do that? What exactly are you going to do? There's no answer to it. Barack Obama said, there's no answer to it. Barack Obama is talking about the loss of manufacturing jobs in America. Again, Barack Obama quote, there's no answer to it. Obama says, and Trump just says, well, I'm going to negotiate a better deal. Well, what? How exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? Barack Obama says rhetorically to Donald Trump. And this is a remarkable insight into Barack Obama. Barack Obama has never negotiated a trade deal or never negotiated any deal in his life. He's never negotiated even a simple business contract. He has no idea what he's talking about. So he is honestly perplexed and befuddled by Donald Trump saying, well, he's going to negotiate a better trade deal and get us more jobs and get more Americans back to work. It's pretty elementary, but Obama can't grasp that. So what does Obama refer to Trump? Obama says, what magic wand do you have? And that is a remarkable revelation of the ignorance of Barack Obama on trade and economics. But I'm using this as an example to show that it's actually Donald Trump who's carrying out Hillary Clinton's 1969 commencement speech, where Hillary's saying, empathy gets us nothing. We want practical results. That's what politicians should be focusing on, making the impossible possible. That's Hillary Rodham in 1969. Barack Obama in 2016 says it's impossible to restore manufacturing jobs. You need a magic wand. It's magic. You can't do it. Trump's saying, hell, I can't. I can, and I will. And Trump did by renegotiating the trade deals, leveling the playing field, reducing the incentives to shift jobs to Mexico. It's elementary, and Trump did it. So that's Trump. That's Trump, job losses in middle America, showing empathy through political results, through pragmatic results. That's Trump doing what Hillary Clinton said politicians need to start doing. She said that back in 1969. Yet today we have Michelle Obama lambasting Trump, well, because he doesn't show empathy. And what kind of empathy has Michelle Obama or Barack Obama shown to middle America? They show empathy for their protected voting groups. That's all they talk about that all the time, and they stoke the fears of their voting groups by portraying America as one big racist hellhole, where police officers are lining up blacks along the wall and gunning them down. Those are the images that Michelle and Barack Obama portray of America. Those are very divisive and harmful images. And that's not showing empathy for the American people. It's Trump who's trying to fix our problems. And I just think that was just a very interesting correlation. Hillary Rodham Clinton's Wellesley speech in 1969 compared to Michelle Obama's speech. They both talked about empathy. Michelle Obama says it's almost the most important characteristic in any politician. Hillary Clinton spitting at it and saying it does nothing. And then Donald Trump actually putting it into practice and actually improving people's lives in real ways, not just rhetorically. More on the Democratic National Convention when we return from this brief commercial break. You're listening to the Marc Scarinci Show.
Now back to the Marc Scarinci Show on News Radio WHP 580.
Well, good afternoon and welcome back to the Marc Scarinci Show, your place on the dial for constitutional conservatism. And thanks for tuning in and thanks for calling in, 717-540-0580. I know we have a couple of callers on the line, and thanks for bearing with me and staying patient. I wanted to get through that last part, my comparison of kind of an interesting part of Hillary Rodham's Wellesley speech in 69 and Michelle Obama, her commencement address, her convention address in 2020, and then the back and forth between Barack Obama and Donald Trump on the campaign trail in 2016 on this issue of empathy. I think kind of an interesting issue. But we're going to open the phone lines, so we're going to talk. We have John of East Berlin. You're on the Marc Scarinci Show.
Oh, hello, Mark. Glad to talk to you. Just commenting on the empathy issue.
Yeah.
One of the things that I think drives the Democrats and the left wing nuts is what we've had in the last 3.5 years is, instead of empathy, this country has experienced leadership with integrity. That's something that I think it's impossible for the Barack Obamas to ever possess. As far as the Democratic convention, I want to say for the record, I chose with a vengeance not to watch any of it. I couldn't even stand to see the sound bites. And it's nauseating, but I'm glad I see a little bit on the internet and I hear what you say, and I talk to some people that tell me this is what they heard. And I do have one comment about, you mentioned earlier in the show about George Floyd being a martyr, and we've had this discussion. I think I even talked to you about on a past show.
Right.
He is not a martyr. He was in the slammer 6 times. His last offense was he was holding a pistol to a pregnant lady's stomach where her baby was, and he did some time for that. Now, I always complain about the media and how much they lie, and they do. One of the things that I think is extremely disrespectful, the illustrious Nancy Pelosi, I heard this. I refused to watch any of it. She presented a folded flag that is earmarked for those that have truly served their country. She presented that to George Floyd's family after his funerals and so on. That, to me, sickens me. I know there's a lot of veterans and veterans' kin that are saying, how dare she even do this? The guy was a criminal, period. And I just think that's more disgusting than even all the, to me anyway, all the funeral hoopla that went on and making this guy a martyr. He is not. So,
but you're exactly. Well, I think you're exactly right, and it's almost. I'm almost at a loss for words to describe what Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats have done, and Michelle Obama was repeating that at the convention with regard to the martyrdom of George Floyd. He was such a flawed man, and the story that the anecdote you gave about Nancy Pelosi with presenting the flag to the family. I mean, for what? I mean, I don't even know how to describe it. The man was a career criminal, a violent thug. He had just ripped off a minority-owned grocery store in a minority section of town that's rampant with crime and drugs. He's high on fentanyl. He's behind the wheel of an automobile, ready to pull out and probably kill someone with a DUI drug-induced. He can't control his own body when he gets out of the vehicle. He resists arrest from the beginning, fabricates reasons why he can't get into the police car, that he can't breathe. He says it like 6 times before they even get him in the police car, and they politely say, I'll get in with you. I'll roll the windows down and turn on the air conditioning to make you comfortable. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. And he is now the martyr for our country. And the most important people in our country, from Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Michelle Obama, are touting his name and saying that they've got to destroy the Republican Party, take out our president, calling us all racists because of George Floyd. Horrible. John from East Berlin, thanks for calling.
Hey, thank you, Mark.
Now to John. This is like a Pride and Prejudice novel where everybody's John with a title. So, John of York, you're on the Marc Scaringi Show.
Hello. It's nice to talk to you again. I haven't talked to you for a while. I thank you for listening to opposing viewpoints. This is one.
Let's hear it.
Okay. I don't know how I can summarize everything. I disagree with almost everything you said today. And I very much liked Michelle Obama's speech. I think she made a lot of good points, and she was right in a lot of the things she said. And as far as Black Lives Matter, I think it's a good modern-day civil rights movement. It's peaceful, and it's people who want to end police brutality and want to bring equitable justice to all Black Americans and minority Americans in every phase of life. It's a good movement, it's not Marxist. It's not Marxist or Leninist. That's crazy. It isn't. Well, it's a lot of people. John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis, the great John Lewis, supported it, and I think Martin Luther King would support it if he was around.
Go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. But I do want to I want to ask you about Michelle Obama's speech. But before you do so, I just want to remind you that BLM is peaceful until they start with their arson, their rioting.
Oh, they don't do that. No. They don't do that. Those are outside bad groups that do that. The Black Lives Matter movement is very peaceful. They don't commit violence and.
All right,
no.
And their leaders are avowed Marxist, Leninist.
No, they're not. No, I don't agree with that at all.
Their website talks about that, and their website.
Well, Congressman John Lewis wouldn't have supported something like that. I mean, he was a great man, a great civil rights advocate, and
was he?
Go ahead.
Well, let me ask you this about Michelle Obama's speech. What was it that you found so remarkable or moving?
Well, she was right about
this.
Okay, yeah, and thanks for letting me voice these things. She was right about systemic racism in our nation. I mean, there's a lot of it, and it needs to be stopped. Needs to be ended.
Is she the best example of that? I mean, assuming there is something called systemic racism, which I deny. But assuming
I know you do,
we have systemic racism in America, is she the best person to talk about it, considering she's worth tens of millions of dollars and has 4 mansions? Her husband was president. She was first lady. And she's Black. And yet, if America is a systemically racist country, is she
in a lot of ways? I'm not saying everybody's racist. I'm certainly not saying every white person is racist, but there are many that are. There are some that are. And
well,
is she the best person to talk
about that question?
Okay.
Is Michelle Obama
yeah, I will.
the right spokesperson to announce that America is a systemically racist country, given the fact that she is black and rose to the heights of political, economic, and celebrity power in our country? John, she has
Well, she might have had to work a lot. She might have had to face a lot of obstacles to get to where she is that a lot other people wouldn't have.
She faced a lot of obstacles. What obstacles?
She may have.
You know, she got a job at the University of Chicago Medical Center, their community outreach diversity coordinator, paying
I heard you say that.
And $17,000. Is that an obstacle? Was that $317,000 an obstacle?
Well, don't you think she's talking? I know what you. Don't you think she's talking though about a lot of Black Americans and other minorities like Native Americans too, who are living in abject poverty and who are really discriminated against? I mean, if she made it to the top, that's fine. That's great. But I think she probably had to work much, much harder to do it than a lot of white people would have. And she's probably talking about a lot of low-income people and a lot of poverty-stricken people who are really victims of
there are
racism.
more impoverished white people in America than there are black, and certainly than there are Native American people. Are the millions of white impoverished Americans? Statistically, there are more white Americans on welfare than there are black Americans on welfare.
Well, there's a lot more white people in the country.
Well, yeah,
I'm talking about statistically
and
proportionally.
How is that possible for so much of white America to be impoverished when white America is supposed to be systemically racist? So I want to thank you for calling in, and thanks to all of you for listening to the Marc Scaringi Show. Tune in every Saturday at 1 o'clock to hear about the important political issues of the day. Thanks for listening. Have a great week.